Hello everyone, and just like our last video, we're going to be having a look at Spright. This time, however, we'll be mixing it with Tri-Brigade. So the Spright Brigade deck works a little bit differently than the previous one. Initially when we picked it up, I wasn't super impressed by it compared to the Live Twins version. However, after adding in the Nimble Beaver, it started turning it around. It gave you extra discard targets for Caress, it gave you extra water targets for Swap Frog. Generally speaking, it sort of sped the deck up a little bit. So Nimble Beaver, I think, made the deck a lot better. I still don't think it's quite as good as the Live Twin version of the deck, but I think that it is definitely pretty decent. We had some pretty mixed results while testing, but honestly, overall, the deck still super powerful. Absolutely. We've got some really entertaining games as well, going against some really spicy opponents, as well as showing matchups against sort of standard matchups at the minute. So again, we are going to be playing a few replays in just a moment, and at the end of the video we're going to be going through this deck card for card and explaining what every card does, because I appreciate maybe not everyone is fully aware of what these sprites do, and maybe not even everyone knows what Tri-Brigades do. It's been a while since this deck has been meta relevant, so there's probably quite a lot of people who aren't quite up to speed with what they do either. So I'll be covering all of that at the end of the video. We're going to play a few replays first, so if you're interested in this style of content, as well as anything else that we do here on the channel, be it live streams, be it deck profiles, be it our stream spotlights, whatever it is that you particularly find most useful or entertaining, feel free to subscribe, you know? Helps me out, helps you out, doesn't cost you anything, everyone wins. And with that, let's get into game number one. Alrighty, getting into game one here, we have a pretty okay hand here. We're going to start off by normal summoning out our Swamp Frog. We would have been sending our Runic Totem to the graveyard, but unfortunately that does get stopped by our opponent's Infinite Impermanence. So we're going to now fall back onto our Spright Jet, which on summon would attempt to grab us a Spright spell or trap card, but it also gets negated. So playing through a couple of hand traps and interruptions here is really going to slow us down, but we are going to basically go off into our Gigantic Spright here. We're going to activate its effect, and we're going to get hit with Ghost Ogre. We cannot catch a break in this game already. All of our plays have been completely negated and completely stopped. We've got no choice but to simply end our turn. So we're going to pass it to our opponent here. Luckily, they themselves don't have very many cards in hand now, but they do have the Spright Red. We're going to chain Max C so we can start drawing cards. They've got Red and Jet, and realistically, that is all you need. They're going to basically set a card face down here. That's almost certainly their Spright Smashers, and pass it back to us. So we're going to go Fire Formation Tinky here. Tinky's going to grab us a Fractal from our deck. Fractal pitching itself to grave to send Kit from deck to grave. Kit, when sent to grave, will send Nerval from deck to grave. And the Nerval then is going to search us an extra kit to be used here as discard fodder for our Caress. Now that is going to trigger the Spright Red's effect on the field, but that's totally fine. We knew that that was going to trigger their effect, so we're a-okay with that. We're simply going to normal summon it instead and use its effect, banishing 2 to summon out the Berberum. We're going to link off now into the Spright Elf. Now Berberum's effect will prevent us from summoning any non-Tri-Brigade monsters for the rest of this turn. We are going to trade in our Ash Blossom for that. We're going to set a card face down. We're going to go into the battle phase here. Spright Smashers now attempting to banish their red to banish one of our cards, but we're going to chain our Spright Smashers to theirs, very quickly protecting us from their effect and ending the game because they had no follow-up left. So there you go. There's it trying to play through several interruptions. It took them 3 hand traps to shut this deck down, and even then we still had enough follow-up in hand in order to make something of it on the following turn. So that at least shows off what both sides of the deck kind of do. Again, it wasn't exactly the best description, but I wanted to show this game off because people are getting hella aggressive with their hand traps. You really gotta watch it whenever you're playing these kinds of decks. Like that Ghost Ogre really coming into play here against against the Gigantic Spright. I wish I could speak. I'm recording this right after a stream. But no, 100%. So that is game number 1. Let's get into game 2. Already getting into game 2 here, and this game is actually hype as hell, right? Our opponent was playing their goddamn heart out. We're going to summon our Nimble Beaver here, summoning out our Carrot then. We're going into Gigantic Spright, summoning Spright Blue from deck. Blue's going to search for Jet, pretty standard plays here. Jet then's going to grab us the Spright Starter from our deck. We're going to link 2 off into Spright Elf. So the thing about the Tri-Brigades, you want to sort of leave them off until the end of your combo, because they will lock you into Tri-Brigades essentially after you use them. We're going to go in the Mask Arena here, Spright Smashers, bringing out the red. We didn't have a clean way of getting into our Cuirass in a way that at least was more beneficial, and that tends to be the problem with this version of the deck. I want to very briefly talk about this because our opponent's about to start gaming. The one problem that I have with this version of the deck is that it's not nearly as common that the plays that you make will assist both your Spright and your Tri-Brigade engines, right? So it's usually you're choosing between one or the other, which you don't really do with Live Twins. Live Twins, you don't have to choose, you're just playing. Whereas with this deck, sometimes you're forced in the position where it's like, well, I can either do my Tri-Brigade plays, or I can continue my Spright plays. And that's my main issue with it, right? It's not as cohesive as the other variants of the deck are. It is still cohesive, just not to the same extent. So they're going to go Chu-Chi and Qinglong here. Qinglong is going to get negated and destroyed by our Carrot, which is fine by me. We probably should have left that on the field. I didn't realize that had such a powerful graveyard effect. Banishing itself from graveyard to now grab his, what was that? Kieran? The Lily? Lily. Now the Raider of Aramis here, summoning out the Adventure token to the field, activating Fateful Adventure in the back row, grabbing the Wandering Griffin Rider, shuffling a card, discarding a card afterwards. The Griffin Rider then summoning itself out to the field. We are going to negate that because otherwise it's simply going to negate our negate if it's on the field. So we decide to put an end to that one. Now our opponent, before our opponent does anything else funky, we're going to go into our Mech Knight Crusadia Avramax, which now is indestructible and untargetable. So we're just going to wait to see what our opponent's out to this is, and they're going to begin their path with Lulu. Lulu, of course, then is going to summon itself out, grabbing a GG from deck. Lily then is going to do the same thing as Lulu did, pitching a card to summon itself, pitching another Qinglong. Then they're going to synchro summon into the Power Tool Braver Dragon, which is so cool. They're going to equip on 2 cards, and this little combo is really dope. He can equip up to 3 equip spells with different names from his deck onto himself. So he grabs the Rod of Silence and Smoke Grenade of the Thief. So Rod of Silence negates any other spell effects that target the equipped monsters, and if they do, you destroy that spell. That synergizes with Smoke Grenade of the Thief because when this is destroyed by a card effect while equipped, you get to discard a card from your opponent's hand after looking at it. So he looks at our hand, he chooses, you know what, that Ronin Totem, don't like the look of it, and he pitches it to the graveyard. So he gets to snipe a card out of our hand, and he still has a negate because he can use his Power Tool Dragon to send his Rod to negate something. So he's going to continue on with some virtual world plays here, just spamming monsters out onto the board. He's going to grab the Rideable Dragon, which again, remember, once per turn when sent to the graveyard, it will then re-equip onto a token on your field, which means that you can continually loop the Power Tool Dragon's effect, because the equip card, as far as I'm aware, equipped to this card. Never mind, it actually has to be equipped to this card, so I was incorrect there. They're going to bring out the Qing Ying. The Qing Ying is going to be the out here. They're going to attempt to destroy their own Qing Ying so they can use its effect to banish a card to protect itself. Now that a card has been banished, it will then get to banish our Avramax and the Spright Elf from the grave. Dragoback sending the Spright Red back to our hand. They're going to Synchro Summon now into the Stardust Charge Warrior to draw an extra card, as well as shuffling out one of their banished cards into the deck. Even more advantage they're generating. Draw 1, shuffle 1 back. Or sorry, yeah, so they're recycling the card back into the extra deck, and just like that, 4k, 25, 2000, easy lethal. So this one, I really just sort of wanted to highlight that, one, Spright isn't broken, at least not in all its forms. Spright itself is not inherently broken, which is something we talked about to a great extent on the stream. Secondly, that deck was cool as hell. Expect a video on that soon. But yes, in this video, it showed all of the plays. It showed the Nimble Beaver, it showed the extension, it showed where we had to make a choice between Spright Blue or Kit, right? That was the choice we had to make, and in almost all instances, unless you've already used it, Blue is the right play, which is the problem, because then you've just got cards that aren't particularly useful. But either way, that's it for game number 2. Let's get into number 3. Alright, getting into game 3 now with quite a decent hand here. With quite a lot to play with, but we're up against Runic. Runic, of course, being probably the best way to play the new cards. They're going to grab themselves a wee Runic Fountain here from their deck, activating it. Now they're going to go Runic Slumber. Runic Slumber is going to protect their monster, and in exchange they're going to get to draw 3 entirely new cards, which is totally fair and balanced. Summoning out the Spright Blue, searching their deck for Spright Jet. Jet then summoning out and grabbing from their deck these Spright Smashers, implying they already have the starter in their hand, or maybe they don't even need it. They're going to go into the Gigantic Spright now, detaching a material to summon any level 2 from their deck. They're going to go for Epira, which will let them draw. They're going to now link off into Spright Elf. And now they're going to summon Spright Red using these two. They're popping off into their Masquerena. Then Spright Elf is going to revive the red that they just sent to the graveyard. Then they're going to set one and pass. Pretty impressive board they've got here. And unfortunately, we top deck into a second copy of Tinky, which does not do us a ton of favors. They are going to try to use their Elf to grab the Epira from their graveyard. We think, you know what, we might as well use Call by the Grave just to stop them from getting not only their summon, but also the additional draw 1. Because remember, the Spright Red requires a monster as sacrifice to use its effect, which means that he's not going to be able to use Spright Red without giving up one of his powerful monsters. So the Elf now is gone in exchange for negating our Fractal, which suits me just fine. We're just going to normal summon our Swamp Frog instead. Swamp Frog, however, is going to be met with Flashing Fire. Now, Flashing Fire, all it's doing is summoning out a Huggin from the extra deck, which is fine. Huggin's going to provide some extra protection here. He didn't search for a field spell, so either didn't have a card to discard, or he already has all of his copies in his hand. He is going to use his Freezing Curses to negate our Spright Blue, unfortunately, so Spright Blue does not resolve. Fountain then is going to grab him 2 back from the graveyard, drawing him 2 extra cards. So far, that Fountain has generated him 5 draws, which is pretty insane. He's going to go into Gigantic Spright. That's going to be met with a IP Masquerena. We're going to chain to that our starter. Why we chained it, I can't quite remember. Oh, we chained it to have Spright Red ready on the field for his Unicorn. We knew he was going to go into Unicorn to bounce us before we used our effect, so we wanted to have Spright Red ready to go before he even brought the monster out. So we're going to tribute off our Jet. He is going to go Spright Smashers, which is somewhat unfortunate. That means that they're going to have to do something to get over us here. Getting rid of our Gigantic Spright, Spright Red, negating and stopping the Unicorn. And then we go Rodent Totem, and I'm pretty sure our opponent doesn't stick around very much longer. We summon it out, then we go into another Gigantic Spright. He did not stop us at all. We use Spright, summoning out another monster, probably another Swamp Frog, I would imagine. Pitch Swamp Frog from deck to graveyard, and then we just start gaming, and our opponent knew that, so they scooped it up. So again, yet another demonstration of just Runic being Runic. Not Runic being Runic, but Spright being Spright. And the Tri-Brigade engine, you can see how it sort of clashes. At the very least, it was eating up interruptions, and it does serve a purpose in the deck, and it can get plays done. It just doesn't always happen. So there you go, there's game number 3. Let's get into our 4th and final replay. Alright, 4th and final replay here. We're going to open up our turn with Spright Starter being met with a Swift Max C. We are, however, not going to be taking the Max C challenge today. We're going to negate that with Ash Blossom. Spright Starter then is going to special summon out our Spright Blue, I believe, from our deck. Yep, there it is. Spright Blue grabbing another Spright from deck. We are going to get negated, but luckily we already have the Jet in hand, so it worked out anyways. I'll happily eat this Imperm now. They probably should have saved it for the Gigantic Spright, unless they've got something else ready for it already. We're going to exceed off now into the Gigantic Spright. We're going to activate its effect, summoning out a Tri-Brigade Kit from our deck. And this is where some of this energy comes in. We're going to go Kit. When sent to the graveyard as part of a link summon for Spright Elf, we'll send Nerval. Nerval then is going to grab us a Karass. We're going to discard Karass to summon Karass. And the reason we discarded it, just so we have resources engraved to banish should we need to follow up. Spright Elf then is going to grab the Kit from the graveyard, and we're going to link 2 off into Ferrigite of the Barren Blossom. Then we're going to use our Berberm to grab Tri-Brigade Revolt, returning Spright Starter back to our deck. Now we have Smasher, we have Revolt, and we have the Spright Elf to revive a card. So our opponent's going to go into Xiamen directly from the deck off of E-Telly. We're like, okay, well that's a powerful card, we're going to banish that. Then our opponent uses a second E-Telly. I'm like, okay, well, we're also going to banish that because Xiamen is a pretty damn powerful card in this deck. So if we just stop him from doing it, that's perfect. So that's 2 copies of it banished. We go into Shureg here off of Revolt. Shureg activates on summon. We can then chain to that Nerval and then chain to Nerval our kit, generating us a ton of resources in our graveyard, which is perfect. We send a Fractal from deck to grave, and then we add a Karash from deck to hand, which is awesome. And we banish his monsters. We figure, okay, that has to be the end of it. But he's got Ogre Dance in his hand, which he can discard to add a third copy of No Punk Xiamen. I guess we just can't stop the Xiamen. Here it comes. He's going to add Foxy Tune from deck to hand. Foxy Tune then is going to activate its effect, pitching itself to the grave to summon out the shark, or whatever its name is. Basically, this one allows him to fusion summon out into the Rising Carp. He's going to be able to tribute that off to summon any 2 punks from deck. He's going to go and search for his field spell. This new field spell is awesome for punk because it allows them to basically pot of greed every single turn, which is awesome. They get to banish a punk from grave to special summon one as well. We decided, you know what, we're going to summon Spright Blue from grave. We don't really have any good targets to summon, so we might as well get this done while we still can. They're going to go into Jam Dragon here. Jam Dragon paying 600 life points to... I believe it was special summon a punk monster or something like that. Take a level 3 psychic monster and add it from deck to hand. Sorry, it gets to search for a card. And then he gets to draw a card because he paid life points. Then he gets to banish one from grave to special summon one from hand. Pays 600 life points to add a trap card. He also gets to draw. There's his pot of greed. He gets to do that twice per turn. Going into Punk Amazing Dragon. Punk Amazing Dragon then is going to bounce 3 cards back to hand, swinging in to take out the Baron Blossom. Baron Blossom then gets to mulligan 1 card, but it's not exactly going to make the largest difference in the world. It's going to swing for 1200 and pass back to us. So we're not exactly out of the game just yet. We only have 4300 life, but we have plenty of cards to play with. We're going to go normal summon the Carrot, and he just destroys it on the spot, and that's where Spright falters. If you don't have a way to special summon a monster in addition to your normal summoner set, you could become very susceptible to someone simply popping your normal summon. We negate his monster here, but ultimately it doesn't really matter. He did have Call by the Grave, but even if he didn't, all he needs to do is normal summon any singular monster, and that would pretty much be game over. We are going to fast forward here through the last few plays. He brings back the Fusion monster. The Jam Dragon also activates to come back to the field, searching for his Ghost Ogre. Being able to search Ghost Ogre in that deck, by the way, nutty. And then they simply take us out. Very well played. Punks, also another deck I've got my eyes on. Expect to see that as soon as I can get my hands on all of those URs. But yeah, very well played from our opponent here. I'm loving the current meta. I know there is Spright obviously all around the place, but there's also quite a lot of other people testing out these other decks, and they're powerful. They're more powerful than I think a lot of people are giving them credit for. So I'm really happy to start seeing them, and I hope they get explored more on platform of Master Duel as well as YouTube in general. But yeah, there you go. There's game number 4. We get our asses beat by Punk, and let's get into the deck profile. Alrighty, so having a look over the deck list, first of all, we're going to talk about what exactly is this synergy here. So again, as we know from the last video, Sprites are an archetype of monsters that thrive in an environment filled with level 2 monsters. That's virtually all they need to get going. In Tri-Brigades, you have 2 main level 2 monsters. You have Karass and you have Kit. So the existence of these 2 monsters means that you can play Spright in a deck with them and start special summoning and comboing off. The idea ultimately being you're using one engine to augment the end board capabilities of the other. So because the Tri-Brigade engine, they don't really summon anything greater than a Link 2 on their own turn, being the Berberum. They summon their boss monster during the following turn, which is the Omen, off of their Revolt. It makes them the perfect candidate because they are not prone to the restrictions of Gigantic Spright. So the idea is you either want to augment your Tri-Brigade plays, which would be setting up a Revolt by also setting up perhaps 1 or 2 interruptions of your Spright engine, or you want to bolster your Spright engine by having a backup Revolt there in the background, if it's at all possible. The problem is, with this deck, you often have to choose, which is unfortunate because for you to go into your Tri-Brigade engine autonomously, you're going to have to use your Gigantic Spright to grab your kit from deck. Otherwise, you're going to have to open up the cards like you would in a regular Tri-Brigade deck. So being able to summon kit from deck as an option off of Gigantic Spright is, of course, really cool. However, it's almost never better value than summoning a blue, or summoning a jet, or summoning red or carrot, or even just summoning Swamp Frog is usually more value. So it's the inherent low value priority that the kit brings to the deck, or that the Cuirass brings to your gigantic Spright and the monster you would summon, that brings around the weakness of the deck, in my opinion. I never want to summon kit. If I do, it's only ever after I've already used my other Spright effects. And it's just, that's unfortunately the way it is, which means sometimes you've just got dead cards in your hand. Sometimes you get too many Tri-Brigades, sometimes you don't have enough. And it's just hard to find that balance. But again, I'm going to go through the deck list. You can build it, try it, do it yourself. Luckily, the Tri-Brigade engine is relatively cheap. I think there's only really one UR. Yeah, it's only really Omen. And again, assuming you've been playing the game for a while, you probably already have this card. You're not playing really any other URs that are core to Tri-Brigade. So at the very least, it's a cheap build to pick up and try. So first of all, we're going to strip out the hand traps. We've got the double effect Veiler, we've got the double maximum C, we've got triple Ash Blossom and Joyous Spring, we've got double Call by the Grave, and we've got double Infinite Impermanence. So not quite as many slots to play around with as we did with the Spright Twin deck. And that's another sort of weakness of the deck. You have to commit more resources to your main deck. But this is what we're playing with. So first thing is first, we're going to talk about Spright, okay? Similar to the last video, I'm going to go a wee bit quicker through this because I already talked about these in the last video. All of your Spright monsters will special summon themselves to the field whenever you control a level 2 or link 2 monster. Swamp Frog and Ronin Totem are also part of this engine because they work so seamlessly with Gigantic Spright and are also level 2s for you to trigger off your Spright effects to summon. They all also have an effect on field. Blue, when special summoned, will search your deck for a Spright monster. Jet, when special summoned, will search your deck for a Spright spell. Red, contribute another level link or rank 2 monster in order to negate a monster effect. Carrot, contribute another level link or rank 2 monster to negate a spell or trap. So search monster, search spell trap, negate monster, negate spell trap. Pretty simple. You then have Swamp Frog and Ronin Totem. So Swamp Frog will, on summon, send a frog monster, or well, basically a level 2 or lower water aqua monster from deck to graveyard. That's not once per turn. So usually you're going to be sending Ronin Totem first, and then for the rest of them, you're just going to be pitching extra copies of Swamp Frog. You just want to fill your graveyard with your Swamp Frogs and your Toad as quickly as you can, because your Ronin Totem can banish a frog monster from your graveyard to special summon itself. Also not once per turn, so you can special summon your Ronin Totem realistically 3 times. Off of just the singular Swamp Frog, because you can recycle this back quite easily. You can summon it straight from deck using Gigantic Spright, you can recycle it from graveyard using your Spright Elf, and frankly it's just a little bit silly. So that is the Spright monsters. You then have your Spright starter. You have this card here, summon a Spright monster from your deck but take damage equal to its life points. And then you have Spright Smashers, banish a Spright from your graveyard, then banish a level or link 2 monster on your field, or rank 2 monster in your field, as well as a card in your opponent's field. So you basically banish one on yours, one on theirs. Pretty decent interruption. Then we have Nimble Beaver, which is sort of like falls in the middle. So on normal summon, you will special summon another level 3 or lower Nimble monster from your deck or graveyard, so you basically summon out another Beaver. So this is another really good level 2 monster for you to use alongside your Sprites. Plus, it's a water monster that can be discarded off of Swamp Frog. This guy has another effect where you can discard a water monster to special summon him out the field, which sometimes comes up. So he's useful because he's a level 2 that special summons another level 2, as well as opening up your Spright plays and being a water monster to be discarded off of Swamp Frog. Then this guy leads us directly into our Tri-Brigades. Him being a beast is incredibly useful because we have Tri-Brigades which rely upon Beast, Wing Beast, and Beast Warrior monsters. We're going to start from the bottom and work our way up. We've got Tri-Brigade Nerval. So they all, sorry, let me briefly preface. They all share one common effect. They can all banish Beast, Beast Warrior, or Winged Beast monsters, which I will from here on refer to as the Tri-Beasts. You banish 3 Tri-Beasts from your graveyard, or however many you need. I don't know why I said 3. You banish any number of them from your graveyard to special summon a Link monster whose Link rating is equal to the number of monsters you banished. So if you banish 2, you summon a Link 2. If you banish 3, you summon a Link 3. If you banish 4, you summon a Link 4. So they all have that effect, where you banish Tri-Beast from your graveyard equal to the link rating of one of your monsters and summon it. Now the thing is, after you use that effect, you can only use Tri-Beast as link materials for the rest of that turn, meaning your Swamp Frogs, your Sprites, they cannot be used as link material for the rest of that turn. So you want to sort of hold off on that until you absolutely need to use it. Then they all have one additional effect that is individual to each of them. So Nerval, when sent from deck to graveyard, or sorry, when sent to the graveyard, will add a Tri-Brigade monster from deck to hand. Harass will allow you to discard a Tri-Beast to special summon himself out of the field while he's in your hand. Kit, when sent to the graveyard, will send another Tri-Brigade from deck to graveyard. And Fractal can discard himself to send a level 3 or lower Beast Warrior or Winged Beast from your deck to the grave. So generally speaking, what your ideal sort of combo is, you want to discard Fractal to send Kit from deck to grave. Kit, when sent from deck to grave, will send Nerval from deck to grave. Then Nerval, when sent to grave, will search your deck for Harass, and then Harass is the one you will actually summon. So that's the actual sort of core combo. That means that you've got a Harass which can be special summoned by discarding any other Tri-Beast, meaning it doesn't eat up your normal summon. It can then link summon using all of the beasts that you've just put into your graveyard as material for its effect, which means you're able to link summon exceptionally easily. And you still have your normal summon to play with. He's a level 2, which opens up your Spright engine. And generally speaking, it is extremely high value. That's why we're also playing 2 copies of Fire Formation Tenki, which, when activated, will add your Fractal to your hand. And lastly, the trap card Tri-Brigade Revolt will allow you to special summon from your banished pile and graveyard to your field any number of Tri-Brigades, but you must then immediately use them for a link summon. So usually what you're going to do is special summon out 4 Tri-Brigades and then link summon into Tri-Brigade Shureg the Ominous Omen during your opponent's turn, and I will get to his effect in a moment. So that is the Tri-Brigade engine, that is your Sprites, that is your Beavers and Frogs. All of it works together pretty seamlessly, if not just a little bit more clunkily than our Live Twin deck. Getting into the extra deck, however, that's where we start to see some of the differences sort of disappear. We still run our standard Zeus package and our Djinn Buster. So Djinn Buster is more useful in this deck because, you know, you basically detach 2 materials from it and it negates a monster effect. The reason it's more useful in this particular deck is because after you've locked yourself out of using any monster except Tri-Beast as link material, well, you're going to need something to do with all your leftover level 2s. So being able to use them for an Exceed Summon into Djinn Buster is usually a good way to go. Then you've got the Sky Cavalry Centuria, you've got Downward Magician and Zeus, which is all part of one little package, which will basically summon out Zeus anytime you want. So you would link summon into this guy cannot be destroyed by battle, so you crash this into one of your opponent's monsters. In phase 2, you rank it up into Downward Magician, and then you rank Downward Magician up into Zeus. There you go. Zeus can detach 2 materials from itself to send every other card on the field to the graveyards, which is brutal. It is a fantastic sort of comeback mechanic where if you're really falling behind, as long as you can put 2 level 2s on your board, you've got a chance. You'll be able to use that effect twice, and it is a quick play effect, meaning you can use it during your opponent's turn. Because we're climbing up, you're going to have 4 materials, which means you can use its effect twice. So very, very good. Then we've got the Gigantic Spright, which is one of your main engine cards. Any 2 level 2s can summon it out, but you can also use Link 2 monsters as level 2s for its summon. So any 2 level 2s or Link 2s, which is definitely very cool. You can detach a material from the card. For the rest of the turn, neither player can summon monsters that are not level, link, or rank 2. And you basically get to summon any level 2 monster straight from your deck, which is insane. So Gigantic Spright is the card that really makes Spright what it is. You can summon out anything. If you've yet to go into your Spright combos, you can summon Spright Blue. If you've yet to do your Tri-Brigades, you can summon Kit. If you want to do your Frogs, you can summon Frogs. It's insane. The options that this card gives you is incredible. Really, really is. It also stops you from getting the Beer Root, because your opponent can't summon anything that isn't level, rank, or link 2. Then getting into our Link monsters, we of course have our core Tri-Brigade cards as well as our Spright Elf. Spright Elf we'll talk about first. Basically, once per turn as a quick effect during either player's turn, you can target a level 2 monster in your graveyard and summon it, or if your opponent controls a monster, you can target a rank or link 2 monster instead. So basically it's a free monster reborn for some of your negates to get searching, or if you have things like Masquerena in your graveyard, you can recycle your Masquerena. Which is pretty nuts. Masquerena's effect is of course a hard once per turn, but you can recycle it back later in the duel, which is kind of nice. Then you have your Tri-Brigade cards, which would be your Ferrigite. Ferrigite will allow you to special summon a level 4 lower Tri-Beast from your hand, which will help you extend your Tri-Brigade plays. And when it's sent to the graveyard, you basically get to mulligan a card, draw one, and then send one back to deck. Kinda nice. Then you've got Berberum, which is the main one you'll use. When this card is sent to the graveyard, you can add a Tri-Brigade spell or trap card from your deck to your hand, but you must then return a card from your hand back into the deck. That's how you're going to search your deck for your Revolt. So you're going to always have access to this card, which is insane. But after you use that effect, you're locked into using your Tri-Brigade cards for the rest of the turn. So that means no more crazy plays. So this should be done at the end of your turn. Then we have Tri-Brigade Rugal, who is really only here as a Link 3, who occasionally comes in handy, just it being a Link 3, really. His effect, you can special summon a monster from your graveyard during your opponent's turn, a Tri-Beast from your graveyard during your opponent's turn, which is sometimes useful, but he's really just here as a Link 3. Then we've got Tri-Brigade Shureg, the Ominous Omen, the monster that makes the whole package worth it. You'll be summoning this during your opponent's turn using, of course, your Tri-Brigade Revolt. And what does it actually do? Well, when it's summoned, or if another Beast Warrior, or Winged Beast monster is special summoned to your field, you can banish a card on the field without targeting. It's basically like a stronger version of Dark Magical Circle, because A, it doesn't target, and B, it's got 3000 attack points. So basically it's a once per turn, banish a card non-targeting, which is crazy, especially considering you're doing this during your opponent's turn. If it's ever destroyed or sent to the graveyard, you can add a Tri-Beast from your deck to your hand, whose level is equal to your last standing number of banished Tri-Beasts, which is usually a couple, but it's not really here for that search effect, it's primarily here to get banishing. And from there, we just have a couple of generic Link monsters left. We have IP Masquerena, of course we do. In a Spright deck, this card is insane. In most decks, to be honest, this card is insane. Being able to Link summon during your opponent's turn into some problematic monsters is always useful. None more so than the Unicorn, Nightmare Unicorn. On summon, discard a card to shuffle a card on your opponent's field back into their deck. Excellent to do during your opponent's turn using IP Masquerena. Then, as a backup option, we have Mekk-Knight Crusadia Avramax. If you summon this card off of the effect of IP Masquerena, it cannot be destroyed by card effects. It cannot be targeted by card effects. And if it battles an opponent's monster, then it gains attack points equal to that monster's attack points until the end of that battle. And that's not once per turn. We actually had some pretty funny replays on stream where people were attacking it, I guess, thinking they could maybe out it after one battle. I don't know what they were thinking. This card, for some decks, is just an auto win. It's very, very difficult to get rid of for some strategies. There are, of course, outs to it. For example, Branded can get rid of this card pretty easily with their Mirror Jade. Mathmech can usually finagle their way around it using their Super Factorial. Things like that. So it's not as if it doesn't have outs, but they're few and far between. And even then, if you manage to finally send it to the graveyard, when it's sent to the grave, you'll spin a card on the field back into the deck without targeting. So that is yet another pretty useful effect. And that does it for the full deck. Again, I'm not overly impressed by this. It is, of course, really good, right? But playing it after playing the Live Twins version, I don't know. I just don't think it's going to be as strong. I feel like Runic is going to be number 1. I feel like Live Twins is for sure going to be number 2. Tri-Brigade, I think, isn't even really close to those two. I think it's going to be number 3. There might even be another way even better than playing it like this, to be honest. I wasn't overly impressed by the deck. It is, of course, really good. It is. I'm not going to deny that. If you're a particularly big fan of Tri-Brigades, this is going to be a happy day for you because you can go ahead and start going nuts. If you're not really a fan of Tri-Brigade, this isn't the reason to start being a fan of Tri-Brigade. You know what I mean? So if you haven't picked up Tri-Brigade cards before, the whole intervention of Spright, it makes the deck better, but it doesn't make it so much better that you absolutely must play the Tri-Brigade cards. But again, that's just my opinion. I could be wrong. If someone wants to hop into one of our duel rooms on stream and prove me wrong in the duel room, I'm open to it. Go for it. You can get our stream schedule from our Discord. I always notify people usually a day in advance, and then sort of closer to the time as well. But yeah, that's pretty much it. If you've got this far into the video and you haven't subscribed yet and you haven't liked the video, I don't know what you're doing. Obviously, you must have liked something to get this far into the video, so I'd appreciate it if you hit the like button and subscribed. But again, that's up to you. And hopefully, I'll see you all in the next one. Bye-bye.